Hello, everybody. This is Megan,
And this is Alana.
and welcome to Tea Time Crimes. You always wait an awkward amount of time to say it. This is Alana, that I have to edit it for like 45
What do
minutes.
you mean?
So it's like just a beat too long. Oh, yeah. Content warning: today's episode contains suicide ideation and themes of suicide. Hello. How are you, Alana?
Bonjour.
You're a woman of so many languages.
I'm very cultured, you know.
To be clear, you don't speak any other languages, do you?
Spanish.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Fluently?
I grew up learning it, and then I live in SoCal, so you got to know some. And I was pretty fluent back then. And then I took French in college. A listener will remember that quite intimately, and we did horribly at it. And then I've kind of rediscovered my Spanish speaking recently through a language app. So I'm trying to,
What language app?
Well, they're not sponsoring this episode. Duolingo.
Not yet, maybe. Okay, well then I guess, based off your T pronunciations, I thought otherwise, but cool.
Well, the French ones are terrible.
Gotcha.
I'm never going to be a good French speaker.
Maybe someday. Don't say never. So what's new? How you doing? How's life?
I have a new child.
What?
I have a new child.
I don't even know what that means.
I have a new child, and his name is Rupert, and it's a robot vacuum.
Oh my God, I thought you got another animal.
I'm so excited. Chris surprised me with it, and oh boy, it's gonna have a lot of fun together.
What kind is it?
A Robo Rock. Also
Nice.
not sponsoring this episode.
But you could. I thought you got another animal and you didn't tell me, and because you wanted to hear my shock and surprise, and I was a little bit peeved, but I was also incredibly impressed that you kept it in that long.
No.
And then I was like, oh, I do know about the robot vacuum, actually. I just didn't know he had a name.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. I'm very excited.
Do you have a registry? Should I send you a gift?
Dirt and dust.
Perfect. Just empty one of your tea bags onto the floor.
Oh, that's a great idea.
We should be all set. Thank you.
Or when you come back, mop.
How?
It has a mop function.
Explain water and electricity to me. I get nervous.
Well, I haven't tried it because you're supposed to do 3 runs of the vacuum first.
Okay.
But it has a mop attachment, and then you fill.
I like it. A motch.
A motch.
Yeah.
A motch.
A motch. It's got a motch on the top.
It's got a motch, okay? And then it has like a container where you pour water into it, and then it does things, I guess.
It does.
I still got to read that part of the manual, but I'm not there yet.
Of course you read the manual. God, I love you. You're the best. Let me know how it goes, and then I'll just use it, hit a button, and be done with it.
I'm very excited. It had it for its first run yesterday. It was I just watched it the whole time as it followed, because it maps out the house, scanner, turn, Z formation.
I bet it's like pretty mesmerizing. I bet it's kind of calming
to watch it. The pets don't love it.
Oh, yeah.
But I really want Nymeria to sit on it and ride it.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Did Haka freak?
She was nervous about it. She had to sit with her sister because she got scared, but she didn't overly freak out. So, because she really doesn't like beeps and boops, and it didn't do any of that. It talks like a person.
That's more terrifying to me than beeps and boops.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, Haka freaked out when I was at your house, so I'm kind of offended.
Well, because we got too excited.
Yeah. Yes, she really let me have it.
The charades game, right?
Yeah, she really let me have it when I was doing impressions. She did not That wasn't going to fly on her watch.
She said, "Calm down,
Yeah, she
ma'am."
did. Well,
Yeah,
congratulations.
that's my life. Thank you. What
Rupert,
about
you
you?
said?
Rupert. It
Rupert.
just
Nice.
came to
Yeah.
me like a vision.
Like it does. You know, I love it. Awesome. I don't have any new children, so I got nothing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, how would a robot vacuum be harder in your house because it's 2 stories?
Oh, we'd have to carry him up the stairs like a baby.
Oh, like a baby.
I'd probably get a baby Bjorn and just carry him up. Also not sponsoring this episode, but you can.
I could just see it. It's kind of heavy, so it'd be kind of funny.
I think I could handle it. Thank you, though.
Oh yeah, you're used to heavy children.
Yeah. Yeah. I got a tank for a kid. Okay. I want to hear about your tea. What'd you pick today?
So I kind of went just random. I mean, you gave me a little bit of clue, but it wasn't great.
No, it never is.
First of all, do you want to hear some crinkle ASMR?
We already started to.
Sorry. Okay. All right. Today is a Balinese soothing tea. Ready?
There's the throat clear.
It is a delicious infusion that combines the detoxifying, calming properties of lemongrass and galangal with sweet notes of exotic fruit and
and
frangipani. Hold on. Frangipani.
What are you?
Okay, let me try a different A. Frangi. I can't do it.
What are you trying to say?
It is what I'm saying. Frangipani.
Do you know what it is?
Frangipani.
Do you know what it is?
No.
Oh.
It's some kind of flower.
Yeah. It's a flower. I see it.
Yeah. But how do you want to say that?
I don't. Yeah, I have no idea.
All right.
I mean, that looks right.
Description.
I'm sure that's not how you say it, but phonetically it works.
Definitely lemongrass. I could smell that. Some kind of fruitiness underneath.
What's the frangipani?
Okay, ready?
Someone please tell us how to pronounce that. Here she goes.
Ooh. That is nice. It's very smooth. You get a hit of all 3 things at once. That fruitiness, the flower, whatever we want to call it, and then the lemongrass. It's a very light-bodied tea, caffeine-free. That's nice. It'd be great as like an evening tea as you're winding down. Why laughing?
Just be great as an evening tea. Kill me. You kill me.
It's great.
Thumbs up?
Thrusting, thumbs up.
It's hearty. The word is hearty. We agreed on. Not thrusting. Oh, stop it. I wish you could see her with that hearty thumbs up.
Oh, yum.
All right. So are you ready for today's episode?
I don't know. Am I?
I think so. I think you're going to find this one really interesting.
Okay.
We are going to talk about, I don't want to give this one a name yet, but we're going to talk about the Scarsdale shooting and Gene Harris.
Okay.
So on the night of March 10th, 1980, 8 days away from his 70th birthday, Dr. Herman Tarnower lay upstairs in his bedroom in his estate in Westchester County, New York, bleeding to death from 4 gunshot wounds.
Oh, God.
The doctor's longtime girlfriend, Gene Harris, was leaving the scene as police arrived. She immediately turned around when she saw the police and followed them back to the house. She got out of the car. She said there's been a shooting. Handed over a .32 caliber Smith & Wesson. The officer said, "Who shot him?" She said, "I did." Jean Harris was arrested for aggravated assault, but shortly after, Dr. Tarnower succumbed to his injuries, and her charges were changed to second-degree murder. So, what are you thinking right now?
It feels very straightforward.
Right, exactly. It feels very straightforward. It seems like this is the end of the episode. It's been fun. But
see you next time, folks.
See you next week. Which reminds me, we actually will be taking a week off. Remind me at the end of this to say that. But there's so much more to this story. So I want to get into who are Jean and Dr. Tarnower.
Yeah.
So Dr. Herman Tarnower, he was one of 4 children, and he was born to Russian Jewish immigrants and raised in Brooklyn. His father, good shout out. His father was a hat manufacturer, and they grew up pretty poor.
Okay.
And poverty had a big impact on him, and it motivated him to want a different lifestyle. And he attended medical school. He did his residency at Bellevue, and he became a prominent cardiologist.
Oh, wow.
And in 1941, Pearl Harbor. So go ahead, get your war stuff out.
December 7th.
World War II, all right? So just so you know, you're obsessed with it. And he actually served in the U.S. Army in a medical capacity. He was assigned to the Atomic Bomb Casualty Survey Commission.
Oh, that's pretty gnarly.
And their job was to study the effects of the bombs.
Oh, God.
So, in 1945, Dr. Tarnower was one of the first on the U.S. military on a plane to go inspect the damage after Nagasaki was bombed. 70,000 people died, and way more after due to radiation.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
And seeing the absolute devastation and the sorrow, it completely affected him, and it changed his outlook on war.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, because like he's if he's going there right after it's happening, people's skin it'll fall off.
Yeah, it was awful.
Yeah. Wow, I can't imagine.
When he returned back to the States, he grew his practice. Like I said, he became a very famous cardiologist, and he built a medical center in Scarsdale, New York, which is like I'm shaking my shoulders like I'm ritzy. Scarsdale, Scarsdale Center, consisting of 9 specialists. And perhaps to compensate for his childhood, like I said, he grew up very poor. He really wanted to be in the right social circles. So he joined the country club. He threw these big dinner parties. He traveled all the time. He went on trips to Africa. He did like these big hunting trips. He went around the world. He went to just anywhere you can imagine. He wanted to go there. And he had several female companions through all this. Yeah, he liked to date. And before it was kind of commonplace thing to do as a doctor, he would often treat his patients with modifications to their diet to try and get them to improve their heart health. And he did it so often that in 1978, all those diet notes he'd been giving over the years, he turned them into a best-selling book, The Complete Scarsdale Medical Diet.
Okay.
Do you know about this diet as a personal trainer? Have you heard of it? So the diet was meant to be temporary, so only for a week or 2, because it's incredibly strict. It's about 1,000 calories. You cut out things like fat, bread, butter, alcohol, cream. So basically my whole diet minus the alcohol. But it was effective, and he became pretty much an overnight success in a more entertainment realm after that, because everybody's doing the diet, everybody's seeing results. It's a best-selling book, right? And he loved it. Now, Jean Harris, who you know is leaving the scene, she grew up in Ohio. She was the second of 4 children. She was born in 1923. She's
Okay.
actually about 15 years younger than Dr. Tarnower, give or take.
Okay.
And Jean grew up in a middle class to upper class family, graduated from Smith College with a degree in economics, incredibly
Oh,
intelligent, eloquent, just she's got it together. By 1952, she married and she started
after the
teaching.
war.
Always your reference. And she started teaching. She had 2 boys, and after about 20 years of marriage at the age of 42, Jean divorced her first husband.
Bye.
Yeah, and continued teaching. In 1966, she actually meets Dr. Tarnower at a dinner party for the first time.
Ooh.
The two connected right away, and it's this whirlwind romance. It's hard to say. And I think he was about 58 at the time, and she was about 43.
Okay, that's acceptable.
Yeah. But he's taking her to dinner parties, he's running in social circles, he's taking her to
Wining and
dances,
dining.
gifts, trips, you name it. And after only a few months, he proposes
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
and gives her a 4-carat diamond ring.
Oh my God.
I know. Like, I'd need to do exercises to hold that up. So Jean actually is unsure if she wants to marry him. And is kind of on the fence about it because she still has the 2 kids and they're a little older, but, she's like, I don't know. And she kind of takes her time with it. And then eventually she agrees to the engagement. And they're engaged for between a year and a half.
Okay.
And then Dr. Tarnower tells Jean he can't go through with it. He no longer
And then
wants
she
to get
shoots
married.
him.
Nope.
No,
He no
no,
longer
not
wants to
there
get
yet.
married. And she says, you know what? That's okay. The most important thing is that we're together. And she's okay with that.
But
Which,
why?
well, hold on. Which, if you're thinking about the times, right, it's the 60s, and Jean she was born in 1923. She's coming from this, she's very much a lady. You dress a
Yeah.
certain way, you act a certain way. But all this stuff is kind of radical for her. She's very involved.
60s, flower power.
She's very into her career. She's divorced, and now she's having a relationship with a man that she's not married to, and that's okay. So
Just let it go.
it's kind of both sides of, you know, how women are viewed. She's kind of got both sides, and she's balancing that. Now, I think my guess is that he was intrigued by Jean because she was probably his intellectual equal. She was very smart. But she's still quite a bit younger than him, so she actually said there was a little bit of a fatherly energy because he would take her on these trips, not in a gross way, but he would take her on these trips and he would educate her on where they were going, and they would spend weeks reading books about where they were going, and he would teach her about the
That's fun.
area because he'd been there before. She said he was incredibly interesting. She always said how interesting he was. But she called him Hi. That is her nickname for him, Herman. Hi. Everyone called him that, not just her. Hi was not faithful.
No.
He was with lots of other women.
Got it.
And Jean knew about it. He was not hiding this. Hi was not hiding. And she was okay with it to an extent. She found him so interesting. She said he was so interesting. It was on every level. It was the most fascinated she's ever been. It was the most depressed she's ever been. It was the most everything she'd ever been. And she just kind of accepted it because she's still very focused on her career as well.
Sure.
So in 1970, they'd been dating for quite a while now, 4 or 5 years, depending. And Jean came to Dr. Tarnower and complained of being exhausted. She was having trouble at work. She was working really hard and she was tired and had a lot of fatigue. And he said, oh, here, let me help you. He wrote her a prescription for desoxyn. Do you know what that is? It is pharmaceutical speed.
Whoa.
She started taking it. It's something that you should not take long term. It's not something that you should take daily. She took it daily for the next 10 years.
Okay.
And he kept prescribing it to her.
Huh.
It is not meant, like I said, for long-term use. So Jean would go days without sleeping.
Days?
It causes insomnia, it causes depression, and it's thought now that Jean was probably struggling with clinical depression, hence why she was so fatigued, and it exacerbates depression
No.
immensely. It can cause psychotic episodes. It can cause lack of appetite, compulsive behavior. It is not something that people should be taking on a daily basis. Yes. Question to the lady in front.
Thank you. Do you think he had ulterior motive giving this to her, or do you think he thought it was fine?
I don't know, honestly. I've gone back and forth on that. I mean, speed was also more common back then. You hear
Uh-huh.
stories of people, like students taking it to get through finals
Yeah, I feel like I've heard that. It's pretty common.
or for diet pills, right? It was prescribed.
Yeah, but 10 years.
He even said that he took it occasionally, but I feel there is a little bit of it probably made Jean easier to deal with. You know, it probably made her dependent on him, and it made
Mm,
her a little bit easier to handle. So I wonder, I mean, I don't know if there was anybody else in his life that he had let take this every single day.
right.
It's definitely unsettling.
Woof. That's really intense.
Yeah. So in the late 1970s, Jean became headmistress of Madeira School, which is a girls' school in Virginia, and it was one of the best in the nation.
Cool. That's a prestigious job.
Yeah, exactly. It was a prestigious job. But she moves away because High is in New York. She moves away to Virginia, so now they've got some distance between them, and she goes up as much as she can on the weekends and stays
Okay.
with him at his house. At that time, though, High is seeing another woman, his assistant,
Seems professional.
Lynn Triforis, and she's even younger than Jean.
Got it.
They dated for 7 years, and he at the time of his death, she was 38, so she's young 30s when they start dating.
Hmm.
And there are so many other women that High was with, but this one seemed to really be a point of contention for Jean and High. They seem to fight about
Hmm.
Lynn often.
Okay.
And again, it's unclear exactly how long they dated. I think it's about 7 years, but Jean recalls that as far back as she could remember, whenever they would travel together, whenever her and High would go on these trips, there would often be a gift or a note or a letter waiting for them at these hotel locations from Lynn.
What?
So Lynn knows where he's going and who he's going with,
That's weird.
right? Doesn't that seem like a little bit of a power play?
Yeah, absolutely.
And one time, Jean and High went on this long trip, like around the world kind of trip, and they returned
Oh my
back,
God.
and Lynn is waiting in High's driveway with a suitcase because High's taking her to Mexico. Just waiting there,
Oh boy. Yeah,
right?
their
Ugh.
dynamic there is a little special.
So, like I said, in 1978, Jean's working as the headmistress of this prestigious school. Her career is really taking off. She's very devoted. She's very articulate. She's very intelligent. And she's puts a lot of emphasis on integrity. She really runs a tight ship.
Okay.
She's a formidable woman. If you hear her interviews, it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, you listen to her. So Dr. Tarnower had written the Scarsdale diet, and he'd gotten the first draft back, and he didn't like it.
Hmm.
So he asked Jean to take a look at it. She spent 2 straight weeks rewriting the entire thing.
Not sleeping once, folks, because she's
Probably
on
not.
speed.
And the whole time, Hai just left her and was going out with Lynn, taking her out to dinner,
Ew.
taking her out to dances, and she's slaving over this book.
I'm done with him. And
She
apparently somebody else was too.
she writes it, and he likes that copy, and it becomes an instant bestseller.
Does she get any money from it?
He put a dedication in the book to her, and he handed her $2,000, which insulted her because she didn't do it for money.
Oh, I see.
And it made her feel like She was just somebody he hired to do his work
Yeah.
while he went out with his girlfriend.
Mm.
So in 1980, Dr. Tarnower actually won an award for Man of the Year. And Dr. Tarnower tells Jean, I'm not going to take you to the dinner anymore. I'm going to take Lynn.
No.
And Jean gets very upset because you have to imagine most of the reason he's Man of the Year is a big part of it must
That
be the book, right? Which she helped write.
Ugh.
But I don't even think she cares about that. She just is feeling so slighted by the fact that, they had plans and he's canceling and taking. Anyway, he comes up with a
No, it's
compromise.
super shitty.
Yeah. He comes up with a compromise. Both women can go and they'll sit at separate tables.
This feels like a recipe for disaster.
Right? Because he'll be on the stage or,
Yeah.
getting the award, so it won't matter. And both women agree. They agree to this. So anyway, 1980, a lot is going on for Jean, okay? In late February, she's still furious about this upcoming dinner.
Sure.
Doesn't feel fair to her. She's also getting low on her prescription.
Uh-oh.
She asks the school doctor to refill it for her, and he says, absolutely not. I would never prescribe that to one of my patients. That's a mind-altering drug. No.
Good for him.
So she calls High, and he says, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's safe. In March, Jean completely runs out of her prescription. And she calls High repeatedly, and he won't answer her calls.
Oh, God.
So she starts to go through withdrawals.
Sure.
She's been taking it for a decade.
Oh, my God.
And the withdrawal symptoms are paranoia, suicidal ideation, depression, insomnia. Finally, she gets a hold of him. And she said, I need my medicine. I'm coming up to get it. And he says, suit yourself.
Ew. I'm not a fan of his.
Yes. So Jean has most likely been suffering from depression probably when he first prescribed, right, the speed. And it's gotten worse.
Right, because it
she's
never
not
got
getting
properly treated.
Yeah, she's not getting proper treatment for her depression. Exactly. She's also has a ton going on. So she had just, at this point, it's the perfect storm. She had just gotten back from this extensive work trip and she was legitimately exhausted, physically
Okay.
exhausted. She'd also expelled 4 students due to drugs, and the board was all over her about it.
Oh, boy.
She was getting a lot of pressure. And prior to that, there'd actually been a report done. They'd hired a consultant to come in and do check out the school and give recommendations. And the report had recommended that they fire Jean.
No.
And her job is one of the most important things in her life.
Yeah, I can see that for someone like her.
So that's a lot going on. Add to that, whatever's going on with High, she's been dealing with almost 15 years of this. And now she's getting slighted even more. Can't go to the dinner. Now has to go to the dinner with the other woman there. And she's run out of her prescription. She's now physiologically going through withdrawals.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a lot going on. She becomes severely depressed and she starts writing several suicide notes.
No.
She's had enough. She wrote a will. She wrote a note to the board. She wrote a letter to High, which she mailed the morning of March 10th. She wrote a letter to her family, and she wrote a note to whoever discovered her body. And it says, this is a quote, I wish to be cremated as cheaply as possible and immediately thrown away.
No.
This is the mind state that she is in. And you can see how she got there based off of dealing with untreated depression and being prescribed speed by somebody she trusted for the last decade.
And also being treated as second fiddle. Like she's not worth enough.
Yeah. So she had a plan to go to High's house. She wanted to say goodbye to him. She said she wanted him to be the last person she saw. And then she was going to go down to a pond on his property. And she was planning death by suicide. So she heads out that evening with a .32 in her purse, loaded with 5 bullets, some extras in her pocket, and a bouquet of flowers. for the doctor. She gets there at 10:30. There's no lights on for her, and I believe he knows she's coming, so that to me says a lot. A
Mm.
small gesture, but he didn't even leave an outside light on for her. She makes her way into the house. She knows, she's been there for the last 14 years. She goes up to his bedroom. He's in bed, and she asks him to talk to her for a little bit. Now, sources differ on this. Some say he just refuses to say anything to her and ignores her. And another source said he finally said, "Shut up and go to bed." He
Oh
doesn't
my
know her
God.
plans. To be fair, he doesn't understand like what she has in her mind and what
Yeah.
she's planning to do, but still, he won't talk to her. She's so distressed that he won't talk to her, and she's not sure what to do. So she goes into the bathroom to collect herself, and while she's in there, this is her bathroom. Assigned, that's where she keeps all her things.
Mhm.
She sees Lynn's nightgowns, Lynn's perfume, Lynn's curlers.
God.
And she comes out of the bathroom in a rage. She actually throws the curlers and they break a window. Hai hits her across the face twice.
I hate him.
She sits down on the bed, just the air kind of let out of her. And she says, "Hit me hard enough so that it kills me."
No.
And he tells her she's crazy and he turns. And when he turns, she takes the gun out of her purse and she holds it to her own head.
Oh no.
He sees it. He reaches for it and he grabs it as it's going off. So the bullet goes through his hand.
How?
That's bullet number 1.
Got it.
He, "What have you done?" And she grabs the gun again to continue,
Mm-hmm.
not to hurt Hai, but she says, this is her account, death by suicide is her goal. He reaches for the gun again and they struggle over it, kind of this tug back and forth, and the gun goes off 2 more times. He falls forward onto her. Jean's on the bed. He falls forward onto her and grabs her hips and puts a lot of pressure along her hips. She thinks that's the muzzle of the gun and she pulls the trigger again. That's 4 times. Hai, this is all happening very quickly too. I'm saying it slowly, but this
Sure,
is all
of
happening
course.
incredibly quickly. Hai kind of falls back on the bed. He's still lucid. He's still talking to her. She said she didn't realize, besides the hand, that he'd been hit. And she
Yeah.
didn't think he had either. He had attempted to call downstairs. He has staff that live downstairs and the phone wasn't working.
Okay.
Jean picks up the gun again and she holds it to her head again.
Jean.
But remember, there were only 5 live rounds. So she gets the 1 empty round in the chamber. So it just clicks. So she pulls the gun away and she tests the trigger again. It fires and hits a cabinet. That's the 5th round. That's the last round. She pulls it up to her head again. And 1, 2, 3, 4. It's all empty. Click,
Right.
click, click, click.
Oh, I see what happened. God, she's lucky.
So she runs into the bathroom to try to empty the gun and refill the bullets, but she doesn't know how to empty the chamber. There's a release valve and she's not aware of it. So she
Okay.
smashes the gun on the bathtub, which sends blood splatters from when Hai's hand was shot into the tub, and it breaks the gun.
For the best.
She tries to call for help, but the phone's not working.
That's
So she gets in her car and she drives to a payphone. While she's on her way to a payphone, she sees the police, so she turns around.
Oh, I see what's happening.
She follows them. She gets to the driveway and she gets out and says there's been a shooting and hands over the gun.
Jeez.
Yeah. So what do you think now?
I think it's manslaughter and not murder.
Yes. Well, the couple that were downstairs, they immediately ID Jean as the shooter. I mean, Jean says she's the shooter. She's not denying that, right? She's arrested. The charges go from aggravated assault to 2nd-degree murder. And later, Jean would tell Barbara Walters in an interview that Hai should have survived his injuries, that the doctors that treated him had seen far worse, and that if he had arrived just 5 minutes earlier, he would have lived. And Jean got very upset when she shared this detail, but she said the police took 30 minutes to get him downstairs and into the ambulance. And she actually started crying and asked Barbara not to air that clip of the episode. And so it didn't get aired at that time. This was aired in a special that Barbara did years later. So Jean is immediately checked into a psychiatric ward under suicide watch. Her siblings paid her bail and got her an attorney. They want to make sure she's safe. So she's in the psychiatric ward until they feel that they can release her.
Yeah.
She refused all treatment, all medicine, all antidepressants.
Would she talk to somebody?
She only wanted to take what High had prescribed her.
Oh my God.
This woman goes to trial, and the defense, they're trying to explain Jean's side of things, that she was attempting suicide with each of the 4 shots and accidentally killed Dr. Tarnower. The prosecution has a very different take. They say that Jean was jealous, irate. She went to the house with a gun. She shot High in his bedroom while he slept. Jean was also listed in High's will for $220,000.
I mean, you could see how they could put that argument together, right?
Yes. Which that amount is ironically the exact amount that he left Lynn, which to me seems so insulting.
I mean, he sucks. I mean, sorry that he's dead, but come on.
So Jean says she remembers pulling the trigger, admitted it was her gun, and they had the gun. They knew who did it.
Yeah.
They say the shot through the hand was Dr. Tarnower holding up his hand defensively. And Jean just callously shot him through the chest.
Huh.
So in November of 1980, Jean's trial begins. It lasts for 3 months. And waiting for her trial has been a nightmare. Her depression became incredibly severe. I mean, could you imagine?
No.
She's obviously already clinically depressed. And then that must be one of the most stressful situations that a person could be put into. So at the trial, nearly 100 witnesses were called. And the line to view the courtroom was so long that often people were only allowed in for an hour at a time to give everybody a chance.
It's so gross that we do that.
The letters that Jean had written, remember, before she drove, they all became evidence, particularly the 10-page letter that she had mailed to Dr. Tarnower. And both sides tried to fight to obtain it. The defense actually got to it first, but it still was entered as evidence, and it was read aloud in court, and that was just unbelievably embarrassing for Jean.
Of course.
She was mortified. This is a woman who is used to being put together, composed, eloquent.
Right.
She talks, people listen. This was so devastating for her. And reading the letter, and what the letter did was, in the letter, she calls Lynn a lot of names. And so the idea of Jean being a lady, like we talked about earlier, and being, upper class, perfect manners, perfect etiquette, that now goes out the door because she'd called Lynn names. And she comes across as desperate in this letter. So the idea now, Jean starts to look like somebody who's just mean. Because she's not emotional. She's not emotional in the trial. She comes in.
Who's this cold person?
Yes, exactly. She comes in every day dressing like she dressed every day of her life, which is really nice, tailored tweed suits, pearls, silk scarves, put together. And the media starts calling her Queen Jean. She's up on her high horse all the time. That's the vibe that she's getting. And the jury, they don't sympathize with her at all because now she's not, based off the things that were in this letter, they can't reconcile the woman in front of them as anything other than a cold.
She's been through so much suffering.
Woman. Yes. But she doesn't want people to see that. She does not want pity.
I get it.
And it comes back to really hurt her. So also, High's housekeeper kept a book of all the women that High slept with, and he read that aloud in court, and Jean was mortified.
Oh my God.
Because she's being viewed now as this aging mistress who is jealous. And she said, that's not what was going on. I wasn't anybody's mistress. That's how she She didn't feel
Good for
like that
her.
was the case. She wasn't anybody's mistress. She just enjoyed being with Hai, and she
Yeah.
liked being with him, and she liked his company, and her work was important, and those were the two things in her life. So the defense argues that the crime scene had been contaminated, which it had. Evidence had been moved. Blankets had just been rolled up and stuffed in a bag. They hadn't been processed correctly.
Good job, guys.
Yeah. And both sides, again, were trying to get a forensic scientist who was incredibly intelligent. His name was Harold McDonald, and the defense got him first.
Nice.
And Jean's lawyer started to explain to Harold what had happened, and he said, "No, do not tell me anything. I want to find out for myself, and I'll tell you what I think happened."
Ooh.
So he had actually taken Jean to the crime scene and gone through her, memory of events and
Yeah.
done the trajectory and looked at the evidence. And what he says happened is he says the first shot went through Hai's hand because he was grabbing the muzzle, just like Jean said. He said bullet number 2 and bullet number 3, the trajectory of the bullets were parallel, and that supports Jean's version of stories rather than that she was standing over him, shooting him in the chest and the back.
Got it. Okay.
And then it also becomes important that she always would say that she tried again to hold the gun to her head and went click, 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 click. He said she always did it 4 times. And he checked the firing pin in the gun, and it proved her what she had said. He could tell that an empty round had been hit 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Huh.
So that she had tried to fire the gun without a bullet in it.
Okay.
And the blood splatter showed that after Hai had been shot, he was up moving around. It also showed that she had gone in and tried to empty the bullets from the gun, and that the blood splatter had gone into the tub. And so basically, he says, "I know what you're thinking. How could somebody accidentally be shot 4 times?" He said, "I get it, but that's exactly what happened."
Wow.
He fully supported Jean's version of events. Jean says that was the most important testimony in the whole trial for her, and when she looked over at the jury, 3 people were asleep.
Come on.
She said he was so boring that it didn't matter.
That's terrible.
So again, nobody's doubting that Jean shot Dr. Tarnower, not even Jean herself, but they're trying to just prove the intent. And again, with that whole vision, right, the whole media Queen Jean, she's also constantly disagreeing out loud or scoffing when witnesses say things that she doesn't believe are true.
Oh, it doesn't
She later says in an interview, "If I think something is right or wrong, I don't sit in a corner and pretend it isn't so."
Yeah, girl. Love it.
And the judge said, this is later after the fact, he said, "It would have been better if she had kept her mouth shut and had looked more demure and more wilting."
Ew.
I know it sounds ew, but I get what he was saying.
I
That's
get it, but
played
still.
a big part. I know.
That's annoying.
And she was also very difficult to work with. So and she admits it after. She said, "I wish I had had a lawyer who was strong enough to tell me to shut up."
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to do certain things because I cared about the wrong things, and I should have done what they suggested. And that he wanted her to not take the stand. He said, "Absolutely not. You cannot take the stand. They don't like you." And she said, "I must take the stand. I have to." She refused. And in her mind, she thought that this is what happened. She's a woman of integrity. She's a woman that people listen to. This is what happened. I'm just going to tell people what happened and they'll understand. This is what happened. But so many things were against her. So she refused to take a plea. She refused to plead extreme emotional disturbance, which more than likely they would have understood based on everything. And she allowed no psychiatric testimony regarding her state of mind. And the drugs didn't come up.
Yikes.
So on February 28th, 1981, the jury deliberated for 8 days. And they came back with the verdict of guilty.
But it's not right.
Jean's lawyer cried, and she sat there with no emotion.
Oof.
A month later, the judge sentenced her to 15 years to life, which was the minimum term. He gave her the minimum amount. He later said if she had pled, she would have maybe served 4 years. And I gave her the least amount that I could. She should not still be in prison.
Jeez.
So she became one of 422 women at Bedford Hills Women's Prison. And later, Jean said, I shouldn't have taken a gun to High's house. Certainly, I was guilty of that. But
Okay.
she said she did not, that was not her intention. She never went there with the intention to murder Dr. Tarnower.
Did her mental health get better as she got older?
Here's the fascinating part. So you think, this is what I say about Jean. I can understand the choices that she made in the trial based off of the kind of person she is after the fact.
Yeah.
So she goes to prison. She has to get off speed because they kept her on it through the trial because they were afraid of what would happen if they took her off it.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, that's not a good time to go through withdrawals.
Withdrawal.
So in prison, Jean actually started teaching parenting services, helping the other inmates learn how to be mothers. And that
Oh.
prison actually allowed children to come and visit with their mothers and be hands-on.
Wow.
So they could hold the children, they could feed them, they could play with them. And it
Yeah.
was a program that had been started by 2 nuns, and Jean worked very closely with them.
That's so cool.
She wrote a book in prison that became a bestseller, and she
Wow.
donated the royalties to form a nonprofit organization called the Children of Bedford. And it was for the children of incarcerated women to help with educational expenses.
Oh, that's so cool.
She ended up writing 3 books in total, all bestsellers,
Good for her.
right?
Good for her.
And after serving 12 years, she had her sons. Her sons really championed for her. They petitioned for clemency, which is when you get a reduced sentence based off the
Yeah.
fact that it's too extreme. Because honestly, if she had gotten manslaughter, like you said in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
she maybe would have served 4 years.
Okay.
And the average for murder at that time was about 6.5 years. And she's already had done twice the amount.
Good Lord.
And she had suffered 2 heart attacks in prison. And she said one time she had an episode she didn't even tell anyone because she just couldn't bear to be shackled and handcuffed again, which is what they would do every time she needed to get help. She said, they treat me like I'm the most dangerous woman in the world and I would never hurt anybody.
Right.
So after 12 years, 3 times the governor had denied her son's petition for
Yeah.
clemency. Interestingly enough, I told you Barbara Walters interviewed her several
Yes.
times. Barbara Walters felt the same way, and every time she saw the governor, she would say, "Why aren't you granting Jean Harris clemency?"
Huh. So Jean interviewed Barb, during prison?
Barbara interviewed Jean in prison, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, after the fact. And Barbara Walters said it so often that the network said, "You can't interview Jean Harris anymore. You're too close to it."
Interesting.
And then eventually, the governor agreed, Governor Cuomo,
Yeah.
and she was actually in the hospital. Jean was in the hospital in December of 1992 for open heart surgery. And she got a call from the doctor. It said, "I want to let you know that we've just heard from the governor and you've been granted clemency, and he wanted to make sure that you knew before you went into surgery."
Oh.
I know. So she gets out. She survives. She gets out. And in 1993, she speaks at a congressional committee about female inmates and their children. And then she goes on a lecture circuit around the country, all the while accepting donations.
Wow.
Her foundation raised millions of dollars for these children. And it actually helped 2 daughters of the inmates that she knew get their master's degrees.
Wow. It's just amazing. Like it kind of speaks to the person that she is or was, I'm not sure. Because her children are grown. This directly impact her, but she's surrounded by women who are suffering, like not having their children with them and like worrying about them. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that says something.
Yeah. Absolutely. She needed a purpose
Yeah.
and she found it. Her work was always important to her. And she just
Yeah.
found another way to keep doing it.
She's good for her. She's been
And she
through a lot.
said, Barbara Walters interviewed her a bunch of times.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that her brother had said something about all those wasted years and it made her mad. She said, those weren't wasted years. I did a lot of good work.
Yeah.
She
She
goes,
did.
that's not the way I wanted to get there. But,
Sure.
I did a lot of good work and it was important work. And Jean passed away in 2012 at the age of 89.
Okay.
But wow.
But wow. Also, I feel like there's a little symbolism with the heart surgery and him being a cardiologist, but
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, she suffered and she had a broken heart.
Mm-hmm.
She suffered several heart attacks. And she was on, my guess would be the speed for a decade didn't help.
I was going to say that's probably a big factor there.
Yeah. So I mean, it's such a sad event. And I believe Jean's series of events because she's always maintained that. She's always never changed it.
Yep.
The evidence even supports that in a lot of
Right.
ways. But even if it was the prosecution's turn of events, there's no doubt in my mind that she was not mentally stable in that moment.
Sure.
Based off of the fact that she had been going through withdrawals, that he didn't fill her prescription. And it's a terrible thing to have happened to both of them. And I just, the way she picked herself up and did so much good.
Really admirable.
Like, how many people can say that they do that in a lifetime that has total freedom? She's stuck in prison. She wrote 3 best-selling books. She raised millions of dollars. She's doing all this work for a nonprofit.
Yeah.
I mean,
she's amazing. I'm really happy that she recovered from the depression and stuff, just made the best out of her life that she could.
Yeah, I mean, she's really a testament. If somebody is out there listening and you're struggling with depression, like, I know it seems like an odd example, but look, she had to overcome something so terrible.
Yeah.
So terrible. And she really had to fight and she had to get treatment and she had to find her purpose.
But there was light at the end of the tunnel.
And she did it. Yeah.
Yeah. It gets better.
Yeah. And she says later, once she was a little removed, she said, I should have pled. I should have allowed, that testimony, but I didn't want to. I didn't want any pity.
Yeah, right.
And my lawyer
I
did not
totally
listen.
Get that.
Right? She'd been this kind of woman, this just force for so long.
Right. You don't want to show weakness.
Yeah, she didn't want to come off as I didn't murder him. I didn't. She didn't want to come off as this scorned, jealous, old mistress. That's not who she was.
Right.
And it's like, but she didn't want any of the things that would have helped her to be entered.
Yeah.
And she, after the fact, she of course said, well, that was, not the best choice.
Right.
I should have had a lawyer who told me to shut up and did it anyway.
Right.
She said, but my lawyer couldn't handle me.
Yeah. Wow.
And even the judge later, I told you, he said she shouldn't still be in prison, but she was charged with second-degree murder instead of manslaughter, and that's the minimum.
Yep. Jeez.
So,
wow,
just a really fascinating case.
Yeah.
And obviously, she wishes that High had been okay. Obviously, you never want something to end in murder. She tries not to think about it, or at the end of her life, she tried not to think about it anymore. She'd thought about it enough, she said.
I bet.
Obviously that's not what she meant for it to happen. And it's not what she wanted to happen. And she loved him very dearly, she said.
Yeah.
And she was incredibly saddened by his death. And she said, I don't think he knew that he'd been shot. And I didn't realize. I thought he'd only been shot in the hand.
Right.
Because it all happened so fast. And what happened is one of the bullets nicked an artery.
Oh, I see. Got it.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll put a number in the show notes if anybody is struggling with depression and feels that they need to reach out and
Yeah.
are ready to get help and inspired by Jean's turnaround of events.
Yeah.
So what'd you think? This story wasn't too gruesome for you?
No, it's just sad.
Yeah.
It's just hard. Depression is just such a, I don't know, like a black pit. It's hard to get out of it. And then it's just like the actions that can come from it are very devastating.
Yeah.
But I'm glad she found her way through and really made the best of her life. It's pretty inspiring.
Yeah. She helps so many kids and so
Yeah.
many mothers.
Yeah.
And that's really an amazing, I didn't really think about that, but that's really an amazing program. She said most prisons, I mean, this is dated now, but at the time, I don't know what it is now, but at the time, you're not allowed to touch your children if they come to visit.
Oh, God, that's going to be so hard.
I know. And think of how beneficial it must have been to the mothers and the babies to be held by their mother, to
Yeah,
be fed by their mother,
of course.
even if it was just for a moment.
Yeah.
And she said she was there so long, she saw so many people come and go. She said, because they all knew what I didn't, which is that you plea. She said, I'm
Right.
an idiot. It's basically, she's like, I was an idiot. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I thought that the truth would be enough, and it was not. So anyway, just a very interesting woman, no matter where you fall
Yeah.
on the opinion
Yeah.
of her. Do you have any last words, Alana?
I don't know. Maybe just to reach out if you feel like you're slipping into that dark place, like either through the hotline or someone close to you. There's always a way.
Sometimes strangers can be really great to reach out to because
Yeah.
you're not embarrassed, or
Right.
you don't feel like you have to.
There's no strings attached.
Yeah, you can get help in the moment, and
Right.
it's a big step.
I remember, and like a caring stranger can really make the difference. I remember one time, it's very random, in high school, I remember I was like somewhere on the campus and I was just crying. And
Mhm.
this girl I'd never met before, maybe I'd seen her, I went to a huge high school,
Right.
just like stopped and said, "Are you okay?" And just like, that show of
Mhm.
compassion. And, oftentimes people want to help each other. And so, you know, give yourself a chance by reaching out to others. You'd be surprised what you find.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Do you remember what you were crying about?
I don't.
Mm, sad.
Probably something stupid.
Don't say that. Probably it's never stupid if you feel it in the
Yeah.
moment, right?
Yes,
You
that's
try to
true.
remember that, raising little ones, you
Oh.
know, you know, he doesn't want to wear shorts, and it's very upsetting to him. And it's 102 degrees out. You have to remember this is serious for him, right?
Yeah.
Everybody is, you got to meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly. Exactly.
okay, well, we will be
So,
off next week
yes.
because we're both traveling and we can't sync up, but we'll
Yeah.
be back. Hopefully, hopefully we'll be back the following week
Yes.
if
Should
everything
be.
works out as planned. But please take a moment to rate or subscribe or review anywhere you listen
Share.
to your podcast. Yes, share.
Share with your friends, family. That's really how we spread around like bacteria. That's weird. But yeah, it's very helpful if you can share. So
That's how other people find us, is what she meant. And you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram at.
Tea Time Crimes.
You can email us tea or show recommendations, or just say hi at
teatimecrimes@gmail.com.
and we will see you in a couple weeks.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.